Welcome, everyone. Welcome to people who are here at the Abbey for the first time for Sharing the Dharma Day, and to all our longtime friends in the room and online. And I know for sure there's people in Brazil joining us. We don't know where else people are joining us from, but welcome. So this is the last Sharing the Dharma Day for the year. This is it. And it's also, I think, although I'm not certain about this, I'm maybe 56% certain that this is the last time we'll do Sharing the Dharma Day in the dining room. Oh, Venerable Trini says go like this. So right now, the reason why we're not over in the Posada room today is that there's more work being done on the audio-visual system, and it's a complex system, and it is definitely a work in progress. So anyway, next April, we will be in the Posada room. Now, maybe there won't be sound, joking, but we're going to be there. So here's how the morning and the day will unfold. In a moment, we'll just sit quietly in a meditative posture. We'll do some prayers before that, and for those of you who are new, you can just listen if that's most comfortable for you. They'll be on the screen and being led by Venerable Thubten Chodron. We'll sit quietly for a few minutes. I'll set a motivation for our time together for this meditation session. We'll do some breathing meditation, and that will be followed by some analytical meditation. So that's the plan, and then we'll have a break at 10:45 for about 15 minutes, and then Venerable Chodron will come in and continue teaching on the book, Working with Anger. We'll have lunch around noon, and then we'll have a discussion session this afternoon to discuss the topics that were raised in the teaching this morning. So let's get ourselves settled. And if you want to try this position with your hands, it's right hand resting in your left with thumbs touching. And this is optional too. It just helps with concentration. And your hands can rest lightly on your thighs. You want your torso to be upright and relaxed. And then for the prayers that we'll do right away, you can raise your eyes to look at the screen and join in if you care to.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger.
So now you can lower your eyes slightly, but don't close them completely. That will lead to dozing off, going to sleep, being distracted. Have your eyes open just enough so that light gets in. And we'll start with a body scan just to help us let go of any tension that might be in the body and help our mind to calm down. A lot of people drove a fair distance to get here today. So each time you hear a section of the body mentioned, you can just bring your attention there and relax that area. And if you enjoy visualization, you can also visualize that area filling with golden warm light. So we'll begin with the soles of our feet. Just soften, relax that area. Then we can move to the left foot from the heel to the toes, soften and relax. Right foot, heel to toes, soften and relax. And we can move into the ankle joints. And relax the calves. Relax the knee joints. And relax the thighs. And now we can bring our attention to the sit bones, and this is where we can check right now to see, is our torso upright, or we may be tilting forward or back, tilting to one side or the other. And just by shifting our weight on top of the sit bones, we can just see that we're upright and poised and relaxed. Then we can bring our attention to the lower abdomen. So let that area go. Just let it relax. And notice the difference it makes in where we breathe from when we soften that area. We can relax the upper abdomen. And then we can bring our attention to the area above our rib cage, the lower rib cage, and in front of the spine. And make that area that houses so many organs spacious and relaxed. Then we can bring our attention to the shoulder area. And you can move your shoulders around a bit. Or on the in-breath, you can raise your shoulders up as far as you can. And on the out-breath, drop them quickly. And we can try that a couple more times. We relax the upper arms. Relax the elbows. And relax the hands from the wrist to the fingertips. And then to relax our facial muscles, we can either think of a slight smile, or we can actually do it. And you can check it out to see how this actually, in fact, does work. Even just thinking of a slight smile can really help relax our facial muscles. And notice the change it brings in the tone of our mind. Just thinking of a slight smile. So let's cultivate our motivation for the time together this morning. And we have this wonderful opportunity to look honestly at a mental state that causes every single one of us a lot of problems. The mental state of anger. And so you may have the opinion that, I don't think I'll ever be able to do anything about this. This is just who I am, so take it or leave it. And that actually is an inaccurate view. Our mind is changing moment by moment. There are many, many, many techniques that we can learn, antidotes to work with this mental state. We can learn how to identify it. We can do meditation on past sessions of anger that we've had in this life and review how things went really off the rails in our mind and how we reacted, what we said, what we did. And in doing this kind of an investigation, we don't want to end up feeling shameful or guilty or any of those emotions. We want to really just accept the fact that, I'll speak for myself, I'm an ordinary human being. And I'm under the control of previously created karma and afflicted mental states. And in moments when I'm not paying attention, or even when I am, I get overwhelmed. And anger comes. And so all ordinary beings have this situation. And we can all learn how to work with this actual mental habit. And just knowing that we can make changes is a reason for optimism. And recognizing how this mental state causes us and others suffering. When we really get clear with ourselves about that and how, of course, we don't want to get angry. None of us set out in the morning with the intention of getting angry at someone else. We can approach this mental state with some firm intention that I'm going to do something about this habit. I want to do something about it. And how fortunate I'm learning how to do something about this mental state of anger. And then, of course, we're experts at seeing this mental state in others. And instead of judging and criticizing others when they're under the sway of anger, we can instead cultivate compassion. Because we can see that in that state, they're really suffering. And that is a reason for compassion, to wish them to be free of that suffering and the causes of suffering. So let's approach the meditation session and the teachings we'll get this morning on working with anger with an open, curious mind, which will allow us to do what we most want to do in this life, and that's to become a kinder and wiser person, bringing benefit to everyone that we encounter eventually, and in the long, long term, to eventually become a Buddha, to be of benefit to all. So for the next several minutes, we're going to turn our attention to the breath. And we'll keep this very simple. You may want to pay attention to the expanding and contraction of the belly area as you breathe in and out. You may want to count. So on the out breath, then in breath, that's 1. And if this is new for you, don't count higher than 5. If you've been doing the counting before, maybe go up to 10. Or if you want to pay attention to the sensation of the air around the nostrils as you breathe in and out, that's a third choice. So choose one of those 3 and stay with it for this session. Don't change back and forth. And then each time the mind goes off the breath, chasing another topic, it can be anything from remembering what happened on the way here to something that happened yesterday that wasn't so pleasant, or remembering something very pleasant 5 years ago, or planning what's coming up next week. The topics are endless. So every time the mind leaves the breath, very gently, without criticism or judgment, bring your mind back to the breath. So we'll do that for the next several minutes until I ring the gong. So if you need to, you can readjust your meditation posture. And we're going to now shift gears and do some analytical meditation. And this is going to involve listening to some points on a specific topic, reflecting on this and connecting it to experiences in your life. So we sometimes think that anger is the only thing that's going to get us up off the couch to correct injustice. And it's true for many, anger may energize us to prevent or correct social injustice, but it is not a positive motivator for social change. So let's take a deeper look at this. So let's consider that when we're angry, when we're in the heat of the moment, and even afterwards, we, in the past, have had many reasons to validate our anger, especially if it's related to injustice of any kind. But it can apply to any situation of anger where we validate it. So we may think, it's good to be angry. If I'm not angry, those people are going to take advantage of me. They'll step all over me. They'll ruin my life. When I'm angry, I'm powerful, and they will listen to me. If I'm angry, they will respect me. If I'm angry, then I'll get what I want. My policies will happen. Now take some time on your own right now and think of the other ways you validated your anger in the past. And so when we are validating our anger, we're actually setting ourselves up for more misery. So let's take a look honestly at our behavior when we're angry. And when we use the word anger in Buddhism, we're not just talking about full-blown rage, going ballistic, losing it. We're talking about all the other levels too, right down to being irritated, being frustrated, being ticked off. All those other areas that we might tell ourselves, oh, that's not anger, I'm just irritated. But when the mind is in those states, we're under the sway of anger. So, how do you speak to others when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're irritated? How's your tone of voice? Do you use sarcasm, harsh words? What's happened in the past when speaking with anger? Under the sway of anger, we often make black and white statements. Our view is extremely limited. We cannot see the big picture. We can't consider what's going on with the other person. At times, we've probably in the past accused people of things they didn't do because we thought we could read their mind and know their motivation. And under the influence of anger in the past, we probably haven't held back at all from dumping blame on everybody else, making us the pure one, but everyone else is wrong. And so, under the sway of anger, we exaggerate things. We're right, they're wrong. They need to change. And when we're angry at whatever injustice has our attention in the moment, our mind actually becomes very much like the minds of the people who are perpetrating the injustice. And so when we start looking at role models of people who are coming up against injustice in a non-violent way, we can see compassion at work. And we can see that this is what His Holiness the Dalai Lama manifests when he is in a situation of dealing with injustice, which he's very familiar with. And this mental state of compassion is far more potent in the long term for stopping oppression and injustice. And I think we often misunderstand compassion. Some people think that it lays the groundwork for others to take advantage of us. However, the wish for others to be free of suffering is not a foolhardy, idealistic notion. Compassion is an attitude that opens and calms our mind so that our decisions are based on wisdom. Compassion doesn't mean doing everything everyone else wants. Compassion supported by wisdom is assertive and precise. And when we come from a place of calm, infused with wisdom and compassion, that gives us clarity of mind, where we can intercede and also for others to consider our views. If not right away, then later on, when their minds are calm, and they can consider what we've offered as our points of view in how to move through this injustice. And so to close this meditation, we've generated some merit, some virtue in considering how anger is not a way to move towards and through dealing with injustice. There are far better methods to invoke change that usually takes a long time. So we'll do the dedication of merit that's on the screen to preserve all this merit we've generated.
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you very much, Venerable Thubten. And so now we'll have a brief break before the teaching at 11 by Venerable Chodron. Since we've settled our minds, let's keep this a quiet, meditative space. Folks are welcome to have tea in the break time. You might want to go into the Kuan Yin room if you want to visit. It's too cold on the deck, I think. And if you don't know where the restrooms are, the men's wing is to the, I'm facing this statue. It's to the left of the statue going this way. That's where the men's bathrooms are. And then on the lower floor are the women's bathrooms. And there are 2 unisex bathrooms, one upstairs here and one downstairs as well, just before the women's wing. And we also have a little room called Dharma Books and Things, where you're welcome to look at the different books by our teachers, and they're all available by offering. So you'll hear a conch or some kind of signal to come back about 5 minutes before 11.
Okay, welcome everybody. You must be the ones who are really motivated. I thought with the weather report, you know, it may only be Clyde that comes. Yeah. Everybody else would stay home and keep cozy and avoid the bad weather. But, you know, you're here. So, we've been going through this book, Working with Anger here. Isn't that a great cover? I love it, yeah. The first edition of the book had a picture of a volcano on it. Yeah, I think very, very apropos covers. So we've been going through this every Sharing the Dharma day, reading a little bit from it. So we are on chapter 4. That is entitled, Is Anger Ever Useful? Yeah, anger is useful. It protects me. It scares everybody away. Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe it does. Yeah, if it doesn't scare them, it certainly doesn't endear you to them. And it never solves any problems, really. We may, if we can talk it out and people share their different feelings in a respectful way, that can, dissolve any bad feelings in relationships. But so often, what happens is people just play the blame game, yeah, and like, look at what's happening with the shutdown. It's excellent example of the blame game, isn't it? It's not we, it's them. No, it's not me, it's them. Yeah, it's always like that. We learned this when we were little kids. Yeah, if you have siblings, have you ever noticed it's always your siblings' fault? Yeah? I know when I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and whenever my brother and I got into something, it was always his fault, but I got blamed because I was the older one. Injustice, yeah. Always somebody else's fault. And then we just carry that ridiculous, partial attitude into adulthood. And it underlies our, international relationships. Look what's happening in the cities now, many of the cities. Then, anger just doesn't solve anything. Okay, so the part of the chapter we're on is called, is anger a positive or necessary motivator for social change? And this is a question that comes up very often when His Holiness the Dalai Lama gives talks. People always raise that, and say, yeah, don't we need to be angry in order to have social change? Because if we aren't angry, then we won't do anything. Yeah, the idea being that anger is the only thing that can motivate social change. Yeah, and His Holiness doesn't agree with that one, okay? I had, even before I met Buddhism, I had a strong situation happen to me that really brought that to the fore. And I was at UCLA. I was going to school there. And one afternoon, this was during the Vietnam War period, there was a protest against the war. And we were down in one field, all the protesters, on one side, and we'll call them cops to be polite, but in those days that's not what we called them. Yes, now cops is polite, yeah. Well, the police were there on the other side in their riot gear. You know, we're a bunch of students, you know, and this is the days when nobody had guns, you know. Well, maybe Black Panthers did, but, you know, it wasn't like today when it's so crazy with guns. So, so there was the protest, and, you know, the protesters were doing what protesters do, and the cops were doing what cops do, standing there looking very serious at us and, you know, waiting for something to happen. And then the guy next to me, you know, picked up, there was a brick or a big rocks, something, you know, that were like that, hard, and went wham and threw it towards the cops. Yeah. And I went, whoa. Yeah. Because what really struck me at that time was that when you get angry and you want to harm somebody else, you know, out of your anger, then in this situation, then, you know, the protester, the guy next to me, his mind becomes just like the mind of the cop that is facing him, yeah? Because you have two people who are, they don't know each other, they're strangers, but they're projecting ideologies on each other, they're projecting enemy on each other, and on the basis of that, you know, hate, anger, adversity comes in the mind, and it can easily lead to violence. And I thought, you know, we're looking at the police fully armed. I thought at the beginning they're the dangerous ones, but when the guy next to me threw that, it was like, oh, his mind is just like the police mind, yeah. And so often in situations of social change, you know, when we want social change, we think that anger is the only thing that's going to bring it about, yeah, and that anger is beneficial. So some of you have heard some of my stories before, but, you know, one time I was invited, I think it was at the University of Michigan, yeah, anyway, some university, and there was a department on mediation and conflict resolution, yeah, which I thought, yes, mediation, conflict resolution, fantastic. This will, you know, prevent these kind of skirmishes and so on. And so they asked me to give a talk, so I talked about anger and the disadvantages of anger, especially that anger clouds our mind so we cannot think clearly, and therefore what we say, what we do, often doesn't bring about the results we want because we're not really thinking clearly. We've just branded the other side enemy and gone into attack mode. This happens, you know, in situations of divorce. It happens in family conflicts, conflicts between groups, you know, political things, conflicts between nations, okay? And so I was talking about the disadvantages of anger because from a Buddhist viewpoint, anger is based on exaggeration of someone or something's negative qualities. Yeah, so either projecting negativities that aren't there or exaggerating them. Okay, in any case, we aren't seeing things accurately. So, so I was talking about this. Well, these mediators in conflict resolution, specialists got pretty mad at me because they said anger is necessary. It lets you know something is wrong. So it's useful in situations of social change, because when we get angry, when we're unhappy, we get angry, then we act to correct a social injustice. Yeah. As if, anger, resentment could be the only motivation to do that. And through the years I've had of fortunately studying with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that is not his position at all. Yeah. And so he always is telling the Tibetans, don't hate the communist Chinese that invaded our country, because so many Tibetans are now refugees in India. They had to flee the Chinese communist takeover. And he is like, no, don't hate them. Yeah. So how are you supposed to see people like that who, I would tell you what side I'm on, but some people have warned me not to talk about this publicly. But you can guess. Yeah. And, that, to look at the people that you are protesting against, or the people maybe that you're negotiating with, that you have very different perspectives on the situation, to see them instead of as enemies. One way to see them is like you're both on the same side of the table, because usually, we're on opposite sides. Here you're on the same sides, and you're facing the problem. So the other person isn't the enemy. The two of you are on the same side, trying to find a resolution to the problem that neither of you like. Yeah. So I find that a really interesting perspective, to see things like that, to take the idea of enemy, adversary, and so forth out of the equation. Yeah. And, in our present situation, it, for me anyway, is extremely, it doesn't take a lot to see the confusion in the minds of the people, who have a different view of what's going on. Yeah. And, to see that, because so many people are locked into, what's the cause of everything wrong in America, this particular group of people, therefore they are the enemy, therefore, we should get rid of them. And to see that there's a lot of confusion in that view, not seeing the humanity of what we see as the other side. Yeah. So what I try to do is to, see the side that I consider the other side as human beings who are just like me, who want happiness, who don't want suffering, yeah, who are upset about something, and therefore, people who are upset, people who are angry, people who are lashing out at others, or lying or beating them up or whatever. From a Buddhist viewpoint, these people are under the influence of their mental afflictions. They're not seeing a situation, where there's living beings who all want happiness and don't want suffering involved, you know? There's no equanimity at all, and so confused in that kind of respect. And so, yeah, I look at the people like that, yeah? And, you know, this has really come from studying with His Holiness for many years. But that's very much how he looks at the Chinese communists, okay? It's not like, oh, these people on the other side are my best friends, yeah? It's no, we have a disagreement, we have to work things out. But they aren't enemies that we have to trample or lie about or conquer or oppress or anything like that, yeah? So, yeah. So I find that perspective very helpful to staying, you know, somewhat emotionally balanced during, you know, with what's going on, yeah? I'm constantly astounded at what people say and what people believe, but that doesn't mean I have to hate them, yeah? And especially, again, from the Buddhist viewpoint, when we talk about the actions we do, leaving karmic seeds in our mind stream, producing what we will experience later this life, in future lives, and so on. When I think of the karma of people who are violent in situations of social injustice, you know, they're creating a lot of negativity, and that kind of negative imprint on their own mind is going to lead to their own suffering in the future. That doesn't mean that I go, oh goody, they're going to get it in the future. No, I mean, if I want other people to suffer, what kind of person am I? Yeah, you know, how can I look at myself in the mirror if all I do is sit and like, oh, I want those people to suffer, you know. Okay, so let's read from the book here. Although anger may energize us to prevent or correct social injustice, it cannot be counted as a positive motivator for social change, because it renders our minds like the minds of those whom we oppose. Yeah? As a student, I saw this quite clearly at a Vietnam War protest, where another student picked up a stone and threw it at the ROTC building. Although I was not yet a Buddhist, I recoiled at this person's action. He had become just like the people whom he was protesting. Why did I write ROTC building? It was at the cops. Anyway, yeah, I'm the one who's inaccurate. No, maybe the ROTC building was next to the field where we were. That must be it. No matter what the cause, when we hate the oppressors, our mind becomes like theirs. Both they and we are angry. Both of us consider our position right and the other's wrong. Both have a hard time listening to the needs and interests of the other party. Yeah. In fact, we don't want to hear their needs and interests because we're too involved with our needs and interests and wanting them to capitulate so that our needs and wants and interests are fulfilled. Both think the other should change, but my side is right. Yeah, everybody's thinking like that. When we approach conflict with such self-righteous indignation, communication, cooperation, and the willingness to compromise break down. Is anger the only motivation that can energize us to correct harmful situation? According to Buddhism, it is not. Compassion, the wish for others to be free from difficulties and confusion, is not only a powerful motivator, but also one that is more balanced, realistic, and effective than anger. Okay? Because with anger, we want to dominate, the opposing party. We may dominate, but that doesn't mean the other party has adopted our perspective, our viewpoint. It doesn't mean that they now are on our side and like us. When you dominate people, they're unhappy. And then unhappy people let you know that they are unhappy. Okay? And so, social conflict continues. Okay, though we may initially react in anger to injustice by applying the techniques described in the following chapters, we can transform our attitude to a more compassionate one before acting. Okay, so calming our minds, getting rid of the anger and the hatred, doesn't mean we just say, oh, well, it's all okay. What they're doing and, what they're oppressing, how they're dominating people and imprisoning them. It's all okay, no problem. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you just, because you aren't angry, that you agree with the other side. You still say, and you can say in a very firm voice that this is unfair, this is harmful, and we want the policy to change. So, but the advantage of doing it that way is that we aren't overwhelmed by anger, so it's easier for us to hear what's going on with the other party. And a lot of times, when we can listen to the needs and concerns of the other party, we may be surprised because we thought all along we knew what they were thinking, but maybe we didn't. And when we can listen to what they're saying, then, we can empathize often with if they're in a terrible situation. And then empathy can open us to compassion and trying to find a resolution. Okay. For many years, I have lived in the northwest part of the U.S., where deforestation is commonplace. When it occurred near a retreat center that our spiritual community regularly used, witnessing the deforestation was particularly painful, and some of the retreatants were hostile whenever a logging truck drove up. But a bumper sticker saying, "Hug a logger instead of a tree," because this was when, especially in Thailand, the monks were hugging trees, and people in the States started hugging trees. And so, hug a logger and not a tree. Oh, that made me think. Okay. The loggers want to be happy and avoid suffering, just like the deer that they're displacing and the retreatants who miss the forest. Many of the loggers probably do not like their work. It's quite dangerous work. I may disagree with the policies of the companies who employ the loggers, but I don't need to hate either the CEOs or the loggers. Although I continued to sign anti-logging petitions and oppose deforestation, I began to wave to the loggers who drove by. Yeah, why not? They smiled and waved back. Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah, being at one of the protests in one of the cities where we are today, and you wave at the police. Yeah, you wave at whoever is out there. Okay, we sometimes confuse compassion with passivity, sentimentality, or Pollyanna idealism. From the Buddhist perspective, it is none of these. Compassion is an attitude that realizes that others' wish to be happy and to avoid difficulties is just as intense and worthy of respect as our own. Yeah. Others may be confused. They may use harmful methods in their endeavor to be happy. That needs to be remedied, okay? But their wish for happiness is to be honored. If we can see that both the victim and the perpetrator of harm equally want to be happy and free from suffering, we can intervene to stop harmful situations with compassion for both sides. Not compassion for the victim and vengefulness for the perpetrator, but compassion for both sides. One time, one lady came to stay here. She was quite a character. And she had interesting ways of dealing with situations. So one day I asked her, kind of what do you do when you see people in public having a really loud argument that could perhaps get violent? Yeah. And so she told me, she's done this a few times, but one situation where she was in a park and there was a domestic dispute going on. And domestic disputes are the ones the police hate the most or dislike the most because they are so hot and ready to boil over and dangerous, actually, for the police. When you try and intervene sometimes when two people are having a knockdown drag out, you're the one who gets beat. So she told me that she saw this man and woman really arguing, in a public space. So she went over. She was such a character. And she started doing a dance and joking with them and twirling around. And I don't know, maybe she had a hula hoop or something. And telling jokes and just completely, broke the energy. And yeah. And you can see that very often. Like how many of you have kids? Oh, none of you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So when you have kids, when your kids are quarreling, yeah, if you come in and do something totally out of character, yeah, when they're expecting you to come down hard on them because they're arguing, they're kind of like, huh? Yeah. And it can be a very interesting way to stop the quarrel. Yeah. I was at a friend's house one time for Thanksgiving, and his parents had been married, I don't know, 50 years or 40 years or so, a long time, okay? And so they were just, how couples that have been together for a long time sometimes have the same argument kind of, every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. How it's kind of like, it's familiar. You have the same argument, the same dispute. So his parents were just starting to go into something like that when we were having dinner. And, I picked up on it because, yeah, you can tell when people are having the same argument again. So I forget what the argument was about, but I took one word of what they were talking about, and taking that word, maybe they were fighting about the car, let's say, then I would say, oh, I saw this really interesting car, when we were coming here, it was purple with pink polka dots and chartreuse tires, and, just talk about some other car, and change the subject. And then they just followed it. And yeah, I saw another crazy car too, and what are these people, why did they do that? And, and anyway, I took one word of what they were quarreling about, talked about it, changed the subject, but still using that word so they could follow it. And then we were off talking about something else. And my friend afterwards said, wow, that was really skillful. I wish I had known that many years ago. Yeah. But, so often, humor, I think, can be good. Okay. Okay, so compassion is an attitude which realizes that others wish to be happy and avoid difficulties, is just as intense and worthy of respect as our own. Others may be confused, they may have wrong information, and they may use harmful methods in their endeavor to be happy. So we can speak out against that. But their wish for happiness is to be honored. If we can see that both the victim and the perpetrator of harm equally want to be happy, free from suffering, we can intervene to stop harmful situations with compassion for both sides, not compassion only for the victim and vengefulness for the perpetrator. In 1989, I told this story last night. Let's see how I told it in the book. Maybe it's different again. In 1989, a journalist asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama, after the massive destruction the Chinese Communist government has wreaked on your country and people, why aren't you angry? How can you tell the Tibetan people to have compassion for their oppressors? So His Holiness responded, what good would it do to be angry? If I got angry, then I wouldn't be able to sleep at night or eat my meals peacefully. I'd get ulcers, and my health would deteriorate. My anger couldn't change the past or improve the future. So what use would it be? However, with compassion, we Tibetans can act to improve the situation. And that has been his position since he went into exile in 1959. Okay, now the next section is called A Better Choice Than Forgiveness? ? Sometimes we feel that forgiving the people who have harmed us is tantamount to condoning their harmful behavior. Therefore, staying angry with them seems the only way to express our continued disapproval of their behavior. However, this isn't the case at all. A person and their behavior are separate things. We cannot say that a person is evil even if their behavior or intention is harmful. Okay? Because the person is not their behavior. The person is not even their emotion or their, that is motivating this. Yeah. So we can't say that they're evil. Mm-hmm. From a Buddhist perspective, each being has the innate potential to become a fully enlightened Buddha. Each person has some goodness that can never be destroyed, no matter how badly they may act. Thus, if we can forgive and let go of our anger towards the person who harmed us, and at the same time maintain that their behavior was injurious and unacceptable and should not be continued in the future. Yeah. One time, I was staying at the house of one family, and I was working in like the den, and I heard a child crying in another room, and it was the cry of a kid who's just been disciplined. Yeah, I'm sure you parents know that cry. Yeah. Yeah. It's unfair. You're so mean. Screeching as high as they can. Yes, we didn't do that when we were kids, did we? No, never. So, so I knew this little kid had just gotten disciplined. Now, in my family, when I got disciplined, I got screamed at. My mom was a screamer, and just I got screamed at. Such that apparently one time I told them, just hit me and to stop screaming. Yeah, that's how much I hated this screaming. Anyway, okay, so this kid was screeching, screaming, and it made me remember like when that happened to me when I was a kid. And, when I got in trouble, it didn't just end when they stopped screaming. I had to mind my own business and be like this for a while, until they calmed down. And, keep a low profile. That's it. Keep a low profile. Or even if my brother or sister got in trouble, then I also kept a low profile because I knew when there's anger, it doesn't matter which kid's around, somebody's gonna get it. Okay. So that's kind of what I expected to happen when I was staying with this family, that, the kid would come walking through the room, going to his bedroom, crying, and the father would come out just like, oh, God, this kid's driving me crazy. That's not what happened. Yeah, I'm sitting there typing, working at something, and Dad comes out holding the child. Yeah, comforting the child. Wow, was that different? And what really struck me is Dad had just disciplined the child, but he was very clear and wanted the child to know that that didn't mean he didn't love him. So he picked him up and was carrying him back and trying to calm him down. In other words, child, you are not bad. You are not a bad child. Yeah, that behavior I had to discipline, but I love you and you are a good person. Yeah. So that makes a huge difference, when we can separate the action from the person. Yeah. And we can say an action is unethical. We can say the action is harmful. That doesn't mean that the person is evil. And nowadays, that word evil is getting thrown around like mad, and just, this is evil, that person's evil, evil. And and as soon as you make it evil, and especially bring in religion that talks about, that divides everything into good and evil, yeah, then it's really getting difficult. Yeah, because there's only two choices. Yeah, then if you disagree with the person, then they must not have any goodness. They must be completely evil. Bad, get away, And that's not true. One time I was speaking at a high school north of Seattle. And I gave a talk, and then afterwards I was in another room kind of cleaning up. And one student came, and he said, in Buddhism, is there such a thing as the devil? So instantly I knew how he had been raised, and what he had been told as a child, that when he was bad, the devil was getting into him and corrupting him and making him evil, and he's got to fight against the devil and like this. And he saw the devil as another living being, yeah, that, comes and does something awful to you. So he asked me, do you believe in that? He was asking that kind of devil. And I said, no, we don't believe in that kind of devil. What we consider as something harmful is our own self-centered thought. Yeah. So it's not anybody external to us that is making us misbehave. It's when we're seeing things in a very narrow way. Yeah. So when we make mistakes, we are not evil. When other people do things we don't like, they are not evil. Yeah, everybody's operating under the influence of their own self-centeredness. And so naturally, two people's self-centeredness rarely match together, do they? Yeah. But that doesn't mean somebody's evil. It doesn't mean that there's an external devil, that crawled inside, not inside us, but inside our opponent. Yeah. No. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so each person has some internal goodness that can never be destroyed, no matter how badly they may act. Thus, we can forgive and let go of our anger towards the person who harmed us, and at the same time maintain that their behavior was injurious and unacceptable and should not be continued in the future. Forgiving does not mean tolerating damaging behavior or staying in an abusive situation. Okay, nor does it necessitate sharing our forgiveness with the other person if they could misconstrue it and resume their harmful behavior. Okay, an example would be domestic violence. Yeah, and it's usually the man with the woman. Although I did meet one woman who complained that his wife beat him. Yeah, he was some big, tall guy, and he was complaining, saying that his wife was abusing him and beating him. Anyway, okay, so you're in an abusive relationship like that, and especially if you have kids, it's dangerous for the kids. So, we always talk about compassion. It doesn't mean that, your husband, boyfriend, whoever it is, beats you and you say, oh, but I have so much compassion for you. You beat me yesterday. It's okay. I forgive you. The underlying text is, so you can beat me again tomorrow because I'm a compassionate person and I'm not going to put up any resistance. Yeah, that's not right. If you're in an abusive situation, leave ASAP. Don't stay in it. You can forgive the person for harming you, but that doesn't mean you have to stay in a situation and let yourself be harmed again. Yeah. So, you can certainly defend yourself without being angry. So using as much as you need to stop what's going on, but without violence that really causes horrible damage to people. Okay. So motivated by compassion, we can take strong measures to prevent or interrupt harm. Thus, forgiving does not render us a softie. Yeah, sometimes people confuse compassion with you're just being soft. No, you can be very firm, but without hating somebody or being angry. Forgiving benefits ourselves as well as others. When we hold on to our anger, we're tense and unhappy, and this affects our relationships and physical health. By forgiving, we let go of our anger and thus cease our own suffering. We also prevent ourselves from assuming the role of the perpetrator, as victims so often do, and thus we stop the cycle of harm. Yeah, so we always hear about victims in cases of sexual abuse. We often hear about people who have experienced that, then becoming the perpetrators of it when they grow up, okay? So this happens in many situations, and I think this is also one of the big underlying things in the present Middle East conflict. Yeah, that from the side of the Israelis, it being a country that came into existence basically because of the Holocaust. Yeah, and people, once the war ended in Europe, they didn't want to, the people who had lived in Europe were not going to go back to their towns and villages after the Holocaust and face more prejudice. So many of them went to what was Palestine at the time. So these are traumatized people, many of them coming out of concentration camps. Yeah, so the trauma, and of course, psychologists have studied that trauma can get passed to future generations. So I could go on and explain this in more detail, but I'm not. But the point is, that Israel, a lot of people it's a country where people have experienced trauma. And there, after the war, people said, why didn't you fight back to the Jews? And, they didn't really have an answer. And so they adopted in Israel, never again. And that is what feeds the IDF and Netanyahu and his horrible policies. Of course, when you look at Hamas's position, when Israel was declared a country, many Palestinians had been displaced. And so they were a traumatized people as well. They were squished into Gaza, which is one of the most populated places on the face of the earth, squished into there. And, and then right after Israel was declared a nation, the Arab countries around it started a war, and unexpectedly, the Israelis won the war. And so there was, future wars and constant conflict. And, and then what happened when the Israelis, took control over Gaza, and then they left Gaza. I think it was in 2005, some time ago. They left Gaza, but then, the Palestinians, being traumatized people, kept sending rockets over into Israel, and then October 7th. So, you have two sides, both with traumatized people, who are both saying never again, and being upset and angry, and then taking it out on the other side. And I think this is what, the world doesn't understand so much. How oppression breeds more social conflict and like this on everybody's side. So that I think is one of the things that happens in many situations. So it also, when we're able to forgive, it also prevents ourselves from assuming the role of the perpetrator, as victims so often do. The Israelis perpetrating against the Palestinians with Hamas, doing things against the Israelis. And everybody suffers. Of course, we cannot force ourselves to dissolve our anger or to forgive someone. Sometimes we first may need to remove ourselves physically from a stress-provoking person or situation to get some mental distance. Then, through practicing the antidotes to anger, we can gradually dissolve our anger. As we do, the spaciousness, clarity, and gentleness of forgiveness will naturally arise in our hearts. For example, for years, Trudy had been angry with her mother for neglect and abuse she experienced as a child. As she grew older, Trudy realized that this anger interfered with her ability to feel compassion and love for others. Under the guidance of a therapist and a spiritual teacher, she worked hard to overcome her anger and to accept and forgive her mother. She also made an effort to be more loving and kind to her mom and to other people in her other relationships. While Trudy was working on herself, her mother was apparently doing the same. So much to Trudy's surprise, one day her mother called to express regret for her behavior and ask for Trudy's forgiveness. Trudy gave it, feeling happy for both herself and her mom. One of the most poignant meditations I have ever led occurred at a retreat in Israel following a discussion of the Holocaust. A Jewish woman had shared her experience of attending a gathering of children of Holocaust survivors and children of Nazis. Can you imagine a meeting with children from both of those? When she listened to the SS officers' children's talk, she came to understand the deep guilt, suffering, and confusion they carry. How can one reconcile the memory of one's loving father with the knowledge that he sanctioned the murder of millions of human beings? Then we meditated on Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. We examined Chenrezig, or Kuan Yin. Yeah, that's the statue in the back there. We imagined Chenrezig in the concentration camps, in the gas chambers, and in the trains and the prisons. We visualized Chenrezig in Auschwitz, in Dachau, and in the other camps. As we recited the compassion mantra, O Mani Padme Hum, we imagined the brilliant light of compassion radiating from Chenrezig and permeating every atom of these places and of the people in them. We imagined it purifying the suffering, hatred, and misconceptions of all beings, the Jews, political prisoners, gypsies, Nazis, ordinary Germans who turned a blind eye to save their own skin, and thought of Chenrezig healing all of the pain of all of them. We chanted the mantra together for over half an hour, and the room was charged. Seldom have I meditated with a group that was so concentrated. Yeah. One time, when I was visiting Israel, I had the opportunity to go into Gaza. And I was staying with a couple who worked for the UN relief agency there. And so I led a meditation on compassion in Gaza. Yeah, that was pretty intense too. People wonder whether forgiving means forgetting. No, it doesn't. Remembering is important, but no benefit comes from keeping the pain, hurt, resentment, and anger alive in our hearts. Yeah, so grudges are useless. Remembering with compassion is much more powerful. Yeah. So if we can do this also for personal situations, we can say what happened was bad. Yeah. We can forgive the person. That doesn't mean the actions they did were okay. But it means we're stopping holding on to our anger. Yeah. Because anger hurts the person who has it. It doesn't hurt. The way anger causes much more harm to us when we're angry than it does to other people in the long run. Okay. So we finish that chapter next month. Don't we have one in November? Yeah, but we can have the Vinaya course isn't all November. We don't have an SDD in November.
I don't think there is another Sunday after the Vinaya course ends. And we started in October. Right? Our dates are October. We can look at it again.
Anyway. Okay. Yeah. This happens very often here. Yes. When we are discussing things. Okay, the next chapter is called Recognizing Our Anger and Its Causes. So that's what we will get into in the next session. Okay. So we maybe have time for one or two questions. Yeah.
So anger, or the action of anger, can be nonverbal communication. And so some people are not going to even hear you until you're saying something that sounds angry, right? They're like, oh, I didn't know that was so important to you, or, So maybe you aren't angry internally, but if the other person is expecting a certain appearance, right? Like an appearance of anger, to understand that something's important to you, or that something's dangerous, or whatever it is, right? How do you communicate how important something is without that?
Okay. Let me give you an example. With a child, little Joey, this big, runs into the middle of the street. Do you go and follow little Joey and pick him up and say, dear sweetheart, let's just walk slowly back to the curb? Or do you go because Joey does not see the danger in the situation, and you pick the child up and you look at him and you say, do not go in the middle of the street without an adult. It's dangerous, and you have to speak strongly and loudly, but you're not mad. You love that child. You would rather not have to talk like that. But you know that that's the way to get through to the child, because otherwise they're totally, oh, but there's a pretty tree. I want to go look at it. Okay. So sometimes you need to speak strongly in a certain voice, but without being angry. Okay. And sometimes you're not being angry when they're expecting anger can be a bigger shock to them that, oh, something is really wrong. They're not reacting the way they usually do. So you have to suss out situations.
With these examples of disciplining children, it just reminded me of the final year I was teaching high school, and I was teaching a class with 4 boys where they were kind of involved in gangs, and we were the last stop before juvenile detention. And that year, the two male senior teachers came to look for me and said, look, we have to work as a team to help these 4 boys. 2 of us, they're gonna try and cross every line in the school, and us 2 senior male teachers are gonna be super tough with them. But they say, you as their form teacher, you need to be where they can go if they need help and like emotional support. Like one of us needs to be the soft, the door. And they said, your role this year, you gotta keep your heart open the whole year and help them that way. And 2 of us are gonna be as tough as we can be to keep them in school, to graduate. So it was I realized, they're never mad. They were really good at they were never ever going to take out their anger on these boys. When they were angry, I watched the men kind of time out themselves. And that we had to really work as a team because it was so challenging.
Yeah. Kind of the good cop, bad cop. Yeah. But sometimes, when people are acting out, what they're really trying to say is, I just want somebody to love me. Yeah. Very often that's what's going on. We hear anger, what they're really trying to say is, I need somebody to love me. Yeah. I don't feel needed or belonging or belonged or accepted. Yeah. So sometimes, you really have to listen to what somebody's really saying, not to the words that they're saying. Yeah. But what are they really trying to express? Okay. So let's dedicate and then lunch. Forget anger. Well, maybe not. What do they cook for lunch? Cabbage. Oh. What? No veggies, just cabbage.
Sticky rice.
Sticky rice. Oh yeah, the kind you eat that sinks to the bottom of your stomach and stays there for the next year. Yeah. Okay. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Thank you very much, Venerable. We'll wait a moment as Venerable takes her leave. There's still a few announcements that stand between you and lunch. All right, please be seated. And before I hand the mic over to Tammy, I just wanted to let you know about a wonderful opportunity coming up on November the 8th. It will be a chance for all of us to be in the Buddha Hall that is almost finished. And, oh, stand behind. Okay. Hello, online people. All right. So, yes, for online folks, will actually know this before you do, because we've just put up the link, as I saw on the Sravasti Abbey YouTube channel, that on November 8th, we are having a consecration of our almost finished Buddha Hall. As part of an ongoing series of constant consecrations of the almost finished Buddha Hall. And the unfortunate part is that we don't have room on November 8th for overnight folks, because we are right in the middle of a very big monastic training course, and the leader of that course is a teacher coming in from Taiwan who will help preside over the consecration, with her whole team of nuns as well. So then the good news part is that for all the local friends, you are more than welcome to come up and be part of the consecration and commute. Yeah. And for friends who are far away, we will stream this, so you can watch it online as well. So it will start at 9, and it will be kind of a fusion of, the way we do things here at the Abbey, and also these monastics from the Chinese tradition will bring their own kind of flavor and ritual to the proceedings as well. So yeah, short of going to Taiwan, you might as well come here and have a look at how it goes. We unfortunately also will not be able to provide a full lunch, but we will have some snacks, chai, to help welcome everyone to come here and rejoice with us. Yeah. So please save that date, November 8th, if you'd like to come and be with us in the Buddha Hall to celebrate its ongoing almost completion. Yes?
Watch your calendar for the November sharing.
Oh, yes, and yes, watch your calendar for the November Sharing the Dharma Day. It will be on some Sunday. We'll work it out and post that very soon. Okay. And now I'd like to invite Tammy to come forward to share something with us as well.
I'm going to make it. All right.
Sleepy legs.
65 plus legs. Since Venerable already said the word lunch, let's work on our anger here. You have to listen to one more person just for a minute, okay? My name is Tammy. I'm a frequent visitor, rapidly becoming a groupie of the Abbey. And I'm just going to take a moment to talk to you about, kindness. We're reminded through Buddhism to reflect regularly that everything that we have comes from the kindness of others. And that leads directly to the economy of generosity, which is how these wonderful people live. They literally survive and thrive through the generosity of others. And something else that we're asked to do is to motivate to cultivate motivation for anything that we do. And all I can do is share my personal motivation to assist in any way that I can, and sometimes welcome, sometimes otherwise. But and that is, I look at all of these folks that are dressed differently from us. And I was thinking about it this morning, and you know the analogy of a drop of water. You drop of water in, and the ripples go. For every one of these folks that have taken this vow, which still blows me away, and it's an aspiration for me, those ripples go, and they're literally globally, even from this little abbey. They're global. So let's look at how many drops we have here. I'm thinking tidal wave, That humbles me tremendously. So that motivates me to help. And you can contribute in so many ways. You can contribute by muscle. They have no staff, and everything that they get is from other people, from the roof to the rice. And I got to use the line I used last time, from tea bags to toilet paper. It comes from other people. And you can donate if you want in kind. They have a list on the website of wish list and things that they can use and things they prefer not to. There are days you can come and just give your support. If you come here to stay for a few days, believe me, you will support them. You will help. And if it's better for you to donate, you can do that on the website. You even get to pick which fund. Or if you'd like, there are Dana boxes up here and downstairs. And I just learned as of this morning, because I actually read the sign, Dana means generosity. So that's your opportunity to be generous. They will never put their hand out to you. I take that back, unless they're going to lift you up. They will put your hand out to you then. But I will just tell you from personal experience, it's brief in the big picture, but I cannot believe how much you get back from the smallest gift. It's overwhelming. So that's the whole merit concept aside. So that concludes my briefing. I'm the only thing between you and lunch, so I'm going to stop now, except for maybe it's you. I'm sure it's not me.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, so hopefully this is the very last time we have to turn around our dining room from a teaching space into a dining space. So we'll just invite folks to step aside for a couple of minutes, and